Hello, Waterford Wesleyan Church Online. My name is Pastor Matt, and here's my dog. His name is Stout. He's a Cavapoo, which is a King Charles mixed with a Poodle. I wanted a Pit Bull, but we got him instead. But anyway, so he honestly, though, is one of the smartest dogs I've ever owned, and I've had dogs my whole life. He was one of the easiest to train, and he honestly is one of the best snugglers on the couch I could have possibly asked for. But here's the thing. He has this habit. It's more like a routine that we do every night. My wife and I will come home from work. It'll be about 5:30. I'll make dinner, we'll eat dinner, and then we'll sit on the couch like many of you and we'll watch Netflix or Hulu or something. And his role, and he knows that this is his job during this time, is to sit on the couch after, he's sniffed us and tried to get what little crumbs we've dropped on ourselves, on our shirts, and in my case, in my beard. And then he'll sit in between us or on my wife's lap or on my lap, and he knows that that is his job. He is there to cuddle you while you watch TV. But then he gets bored about an hour or so in, and he'll get up, he'll go find his favorite toy, and he has this really good habit of being able to drop the toy directly into your hand. If your hand's out like this, or it's on your lap like that, he'll drop it right into your hand, and what he wants, and he'll look at you with those eyes, what he wants is for you to play fetch with him. So that's what we'll do. We'll be sitting on the couch, and he'll bring the ball to me, and I'll throw it into the kitchen. He'll bring it back, and we'll just keep doing that for about an hour or so until he's tired, and it's just a fun time. And it's a great little habit that we've had, or a great little routine that we've kind of created for ourselves in the Wyman household, and it's just so cute. And again, look at those eyes. But a couple weeks ago, as I was preparing for the sermon, I kind of realized something. His faith in me to throw that ball every single time that he drops it is second to none. He has faith that he is going to be able to play fetch with me every night because I've been reliable in doing so. And I started to think about our relationship with God in that way. And then I started to think, wow, that dog really has the good life, right? And I love those seasons in life where I have the good life, or you have the good life. You know those seasons where like the roof doesn't leak, the car doesn't break down, you have a little bit of money in the bank, maybe your family life's doing great, whatever it may be, nothing seems to be going wrong. Those seasons are kind of few and far between sometimes, but I like it when they're there. Because here's the thing. I found that in those seasons of my life, it is so easy to be able to Sabbath, to be able to be in prayer, to be able to be in relationship with the Lord. You don't feel like it's one extra thing to maybe go to church or maybe a worship night or a Bible study. You kind of look forward to spending time with the Lord because life is good. And I often find that in those times, it's really easy to give things over to God because sometimes He'll multiply them. And I often feel in those seasons like the boy in John chapter 6 who gave his lunch over to God, gave his lunch over to Christ, and fed the 5,000. For those of you that don't know this story, the little boy was brought before Christ with just his lunchbox. He had 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And the Lord multiplied, fed 5,000 people, and then there was more left over than what they started with. And sometimes I feel like when I give things over to God, when life is good, that happens, and it's great. So here's the story. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the little boy. Imagine just packing a lunch in the morning. Maybe you've got a little lunchbox that you bring to work, or maybe you just bring it in a bag, or whatever your situation is. Imagine you're packing lunch to go to work, or in his case, to go follow Christ, after seeing him perform miracles and thinking nothing of it. I know for me, when I pack my lunch in the morning, I've got a little Star Wars lunchbox that my best man at my wedding gave me. It was awesome wedding gift, and I pack that every single morning, and I don't think anything of it. I just throw a sandwich in there, and I put it in the car, and I only think about it when it's lunchtime. That little boy was probably thinking the same thing. Little did he know, and this is often how God works, Christ was going to do something amazing with what the little thing he could offer him. And I want you to imagine what God can maybe do with what you give him. But here's the thing. If I just stopped the video right here, if we just ended right there, that'd be an awesome, inspiring sermon. God being able to take every little thing that we give him and multiply it and be able to do amazing things with it. And here's the thing. The thing I love about this story is that God has the capacity to do that. God is God. Christ is Christ. He can do whatever he wants with what we give him. But here's the thing. We've all lived enough life to know that sometimes when we give things to God, we don't necessarily see the multiplication. We don't necessarily see the blessing. We don't necessarily see the things that are going on behind the scenes because we are human and he is God. This would be a really easy sermon to preach if I just stopped right here because it's inspiring and it would just be so good to hear, hey, if I give everything to God, he's going to bless it and multiply it and I'm going to be able to see that. So if I give him $1, I'll get $5,000 back, right? Well, no. Again, we've all lived enough life to know that that's not always how life works. In fact, most times, that's not how life works. But I don't want you to lose hope because there's hope in this story. Because here's the thing. I'm going to tell you another story of somebody who gave something over to Christ and was blessed, even though this person didn't receive anything back. Still blessed. So here it is. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given to Jesus in Jesus' honor. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclined at the table with him. Then Mary took out a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Sometimes in life we're the little boy, giving something over to God, and we can see how he blesses us and multiplies the thing that we've given him. Maybe what we've given him is our work life. Maybe every morning we pray, Lord, use me to exemplify you where I work. Not for the paycheck, not for my boss, not for my own self-satisfaction, but for you, Lord. And maybe you've seen your productivity go up. Maybe you've just had a better day at work, knowing that you're doing this for the Lord and not for yourself. Just something visible. Or maybe you give your finances over to God saying, Lord, I'm going to stop spending frivolously. I'm going to save. I'm going to tithe. I'm going to do all the things that the Bible tells me to do financially. I'm not going to be wasteful. I'm going to be a good stewardship of the blessing that you've given me. And then maybe you've seen that multiply. Or maybe it's your personal life. Maybe instead of sitting on the couch, like admittedly I do a lot, and watching TV, I'm going to go work with my hands. I'm going to go have coffee with a friend. I'm going to go steward my time in a better way than just relaxing. And then maybe you've seen blessing come out of that. Or maybe it's your thoughts. Now, I just took a road trip back to New York from the Midwest, and I'll tell you what, if you know I-90, you know there's a lot of bad drivers on I-90. And my thoughts sometimes, I'll be honest, weren't that great. So, what if you gave your thoughts over to God? Instead of beeping at the person who just cut you off, instead of thinking nasty things or maybe saying nasty things about that person to yourself or whoever else is in the car, what if you took a second and said, Lord, be with me, calm me down, be with that person. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know if they're in a rush for whatever reason, or maybe they are just cutting me off and being a jerk, but Lord, I pray for them. And the blessing there is you start to see people through the eyes of God and not through your own. And this list could go on and on. Whatever you give to God, maybe you see the blessing and notice the blessing. So maybe we're like the little boy. Or maybe, and again, more often, maybe we're Mary. Simply just pouring out ourselves to God. Simply laying it at his feet and not necessarily seeing the results of the blessing. But rest assured, and Jesus says this to Mary, to Judas Iscariot here, she is blessed. Even though we might not see the blessing. Because here's the thing. If we were back then 2,000 years ago and we were reclined at the table with him, with Lazarus, with Christ, with Judas, and with Mary, many of us would probably be on the side of Judas Iscariot. Even though he was selfish, let's just pretend for a second that he had pure motives. That was a year's worth of wages just in that little pint of nard, or expensive perfume, or it's actually perfumed like oil, olive oil. That's a year's worth. Now, if you go back to the story of the little boy giving his bread, the disciple says that it would take half a year's worth of wages to feed all those people. And God did amazing things with that. So imagine a year's worth in a little jar being poured out onto Christ's feet. I'm sure you and probably me would think, wow, what a waste. You just poured all that money literally on the floor. Why'd you do that? But Jesus says, no, this is good. This is blessed. So, maybe in life we're the little boy giving things over to God and we see the multiplication, but again, more often than not, we pour ourselves out to God and we don't necessarily see the blessing, but there is blessing. There is blessing. Oftentimes, before each Sunday service, I pray this prayer. And it goes like this. I say, Lord, take us here. Change our hearts. Open our minds. Open our hearts to what you have to say so that we can be the change we want to see in the community. And I pray this prayer very specifically because it allows myself, and I feel it leads our congregation, to come to God in a humble posture. We're not asking anything from him, but rather we're asking to open ourselves up to what he has to say to us so that we can be the change we want to see in our own family, maybe our work, maybe our community, wherever we go during the week. Just asking that we can pour ourselves out to him, and so that the blessings we can give to others. I pray that prayer every Sunday, and to me, that's me pouring out my worship onto the Lord's feet like Mary. But it can be really hard. Again, we've all lived enough life to know that it can be really hard to be Mary sometimes. It can be really difficult to worship the Lord and not see anything in return. And my philosophy is this. It's because it goes against our very nature, right? It goes against who we are as human beings. It goes against who we are as Americans. Think about it. You go to any store, any supermarket, any Walmart, or maybe you have someone work on your house or rake your leaves or something. You get something and you pay them money. So why is it not the same with God, right? I worship God on Sunday mornings. I come, I sing the song, I pray the prayers, I read the scripture. Why, Lord, are you not blessing me? Why do I not automatically see $5,000 in my bank account? Why am I not getting a free car? Why are these blessings not materializing in front of me? That can be frustrating if we don't fully understand the relationship that we have with God. Because here's the thing. God's not an investment that we put stuff into, our worship, our time, our singing, whatever it may be, and we get something out of it. No, God is not an investment. God is the Almighty. He has the plan. He knows the background knowledge behind everything. We are just called to worship, to lay what we have at his feet, and he then has the power to do with it what he wants. And our blessing is to be able to be a part of that, even though we might not see the blessings generally. It's not our job to demand of God the things that we want from him. Because here's the thing, when we give over control of the things that we hold dear in our lives, all those things I talked about, work, family, our private time, our fun time, our relaxation time, or maybe it's our finances or whatever it is, when we hand over what we hold dear, we are relinquishing control to someone who actually has the capacity to bear it all. And that is a blessing. And this goes against our very nature, as I was saying. But it allows God to work his will, not our will. So you might be asking yourself, okay, so if my role isn't to give to God to receive, so what is my role? What is my relationship with God in this? This isn't what I'm used to, again, as just a human being living where we live. This isn't what I'm used to. I'm used to giving and receiving, right? Commodification. Well, let's turn to the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6:9 through 13, and I think we'll find the answer there. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Verses 9 and 10 hold the key. Hallowed be your name. Holy is your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Not hallowed be my name, not my wishes, not my will, but rather his will be done. That is the relationship we need to have with God. Because oftentimes, if that's not the relationship we have with God, going back to the commodification of faith that we were just talking about, a lot of the times we can treat God like our own personal genie. That we put in a lamp, we put up on the shelf, and then when we need something from him, we bring it down, we rub it, we call that prayer sometimes. And we ask him, Lord, I pray that you bless me in this way. And then when he does it or doesn't do it, we put it back up on the shelf and say thanks, or thanks a lot, God. And that is not the relationship that we need to have with God. Hallowed be his name. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Not ours. Not ours. So, how do we give to God? And what does that look like? Practically speaking, what does that look like? And how does it benefit us? Not to be selfish, but how does it benefit us? Well, let me tell you, because it's not selfish at all. Here it is. In the giving, we learn to trust the Lord who knows infinitely more than we do about everything and is in control of everything. When we relinquish control of the things we think we have control over, we realize we were never in control at all. And that is freedom. And that is a blessing. In the giving, we relinquish control of the things that God can actually handle, that we just pretend that we can handle day to day. In the giving, we remember that God has already given his Son for us. He has already given all. When we give to him, we are reminded that he sent his Son down on the cross to die for us so that we can have a more perfect and eternal relationship with our Creator. And that is a blessing. In the giving, we learn how to see the world through God's eyes and not through our own eyes. Going back to the example of driving down the highway and the person cutting us off, or you fill in your situation. Instead of cursing them out, instead of thinking poor thoughts about whatever that person did, or whoever the person you're thinking about, maybe take 5 seconds before we interact with those frustrating people and think, Lord, I just pray that you take this moment and you allow me to see these people or this person through your eyes and not my own. That took me 7 seconds max. But I tell you what, if we give that 7 seconds every day that we have to interact with those people that may frustrate us, disagree with us, or whatever it is, if we make that a habit, our minds and our hearts will change, and that is a blessing. In the giving, we allow ourselves to feel what it means to be fully reliant on the Father. Imagine a life where you realize, embrace, appreciate the fact that you don't have to go it alone. 2 weeks ago was Mother's Day, and I talked about the mother Hagar, who, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but who was essentially raped, pregnant, and felt alone because she was cast out by the family that had done that to her. But here's the thing. God reminded her that she is seen, she is loved, and that she is not alone. God is a God of love. And when we give everything we have over to him, we're reminded of that truth, because God will never fail. We might just not see what's going on in the background, but we need to have faith that he is also faithful. And lastly, in a far from complete list, in the giving we learn that we're loved by an infinitely loving God. Infinitely loving. So, sometimes in life we're going to be the little boy. We're going to give things to God and we're going to be able to see the blessing. And I love that story because it shows the capacity of God. And sometimes, and again, more often than not, we're going to be like Mary, simply pouring out our worship, our time, our effort at God's feet, receiving blessings, but maybe just not in the way that we think. And it's not our job to tell God what to do with what we give him, but rather trust in him that he has our and the world's best interests at heart. So, as this video concludes, I want you to take a few seconds, maybe a few minutes after this video ends, to think about the things in your life that you're giving over to God and maybe expecting God to bless you. That means you really haven't given it over. You're just simply holding it over God, saying, hey, I'll give you this if you give me that. Or maybe the things that you haven't given over to God because you're afraid to do so. And just think to yourself, how can I be more like Mary? Understanding that it is not our job to give things to God. It is not our right to give things to God, expecting him to give things back. He's God, the Almighty, not an investment. And then pray about it. Say, Lord, what are the things in my life that I have not given you? Or what are the things in my life that I want to exchange with you? And how can I learn to be more like Mary? Simply pouring out myself at your feet. Because that, Mary understood this, that is where the blessing is in. Not in what God does with what we give him, but simply in the giving of what we have.